What's up, y'all? This is Nick from the Ground Up DIY, and I know it's been a little while, but during that time I was finally able to fix the smoker by adding this awesome chimney, and I also did a few more modifications as well. But without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. First, I want to thank everybody who left a comment in parts 1 and 2 of the brick smoker series, and without y'all help I wouldn't have been able to get the smoker working right, so thank y'all for leaving comments. And if you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, make sure you go watch those first before watching this video so you won't be lost, and I have those videos linked down below in the description. But basically, after taking y'all advice and doing my own research, I decided the first thing that I was going to do to fix the temperature problem inside my smoker was to build a chimney, and that was the thing that worked. So I'm glad that worked, and I didn't have to go through a whole bunch of other things to get the smoker working right. For the chimney parts, I decided to go with DuraVent, and I decided to use their DuraBlack 6" by 48" single wall chimney pipe, the DuraBlack 6" 90-degree elbow single wall chimney pipe, and the DuraPlus 6" round chimney cap. I took the pipes and the cap out of their individual boxes and gave them a quick look over just to make sure that everything was straight and to make sure that nothing was out of the ordinary. And after that, I went ahead and pulled out the instruction manual and gave that a quick read. Once I got done reading that, I decided to wait till later on to assemble the chimney because I need to make the intake and outtake holes on the smoker bigger first, so I went ahead and got started on that. So for my intake vents, I currently have holes on the side and on the back of the fire pit side of the smoker, and this is where air goes into the smoker. And for my exhaust vents, I have holes on the back of the food store side of the smoker, and this is where all the smoke comes out at. And because these holes are too small, I think that's where my temperature problem is coming from. So to fix this, I plan on sealing up the holes on the back of the food store side and on the back of the fire pit side. And then for the holes on the side of the fire pit side, I plan on knocking those 3 brick out that have the holes in it and just making it one big hole. And then I also plan on putting another hole on the side of the food store side, and this is where I'm going to install the chimney. And by doing this, I have a one direction way of flow, so it'll be able to pull in air from one direction and it'll be able to go out one direction, and I think this will be able to fix my temperature problem. To start off, I went ahead and pulled out some of my handy dandy chalk so that I can go ahead and mark the area where I plan on knocking the brick out at. In order to make these larger holes on the smoker, I had to use a hammer drill with a masonry bit, and I also had to use a chisel and a hammer. I use my hammer drill to drill multiple holes into the joints in between the brick, and I did this because it's easier to drill through the mortar than the brick. So wherever area you decide that you want to cut out, make sure that you line it up with the joints in between the brick because it's easier to drill through these. And what I did was I just drilled holes all around the area that I wanted to cut the brick out. And once I got done with that, I went ahead and pulled out my chisel and my hammer, and I just chiseled and hammered away until I was able to knock out all the brick that I needed out of this area. After that, I went ahead and pulled out my tape measure so that I can measure how high I need to make the hole for when I install the chimney. One of my subscribers recommended me to watch a video by Heath Jackson, and in his video he made a smoker out of cinder blocks, and he was having temperature problems with his as well, but to fix that he had added a chimney like I'm doing. And for his chimney, he recommended that you add it 2 to 3 feet above your fire. So for mine, I decided to do the same. So from my pipe going up, I decided to go up 2.5 feet, and then I used my chalk to place a mark so that I know where I'm going to put my chimney at. I then used my ruler to go ahead and transfer the mark over to the other side of the wall, and I did this because when I put my chimney in, I want to make sure that I don't knock out the brick that I have laying down to lay my grill racks on. And once I measured this out and to make sure that everything was going to be okay, I went ahead on the outside of the smoker and placed my final mark, and this is where I'm going to be placing my chimney pipe at. I also decided to make a vertical mark on center going about 3 inches up and 3 inches down, and I did this so that when I line my chimney pipe up I can do it more accurately. So when it came to drawing out the hole, I went ahead and grabbed my 90-degree elbow because this is the part of the pipe that's going to be inside the smoker. So I went ahead and lined this up with the marks that I made, and then I used my piece of chalk to trace around the pipe. And when I did this, I really didn't like how the circle looked, so I went ahead and grabbed a marker and traced around it again. And when you make your circle, you want to make sure that the circle is tight around the pipe as possible, because when you put the pipe inside the smoker, you want it to have a tight fit. So make sure that you draw a tight circle. I repeated the same process to make this hole as I did to make the hole for the intake vent. I started drilling in between the joints of the brick first, and then I moved to drilling through the brick. And when drilling through the brick, I recommend that you wear some goggles, because I did have safety glasses on, but because the wind was blowing, I still had pieces of brick flying towards my face, and I know a little bit had gotten in my eye, so make sure you wear goggles when you're doing this. I continued to drill holes around the circle that I drew, and I also drilled some holes in the middle because this is where a joint line was. And while doing this, I also used my chisel and my hammer to help knock away some of the brick along the way, and I kept repeating this process until I was able to knock out all the brick. I went ahead and grabbed my 90-degree elbow to see if it was going to be able to fit inside the hole, but it wasn't able to fit in quite yet. So from there, I used my hammer and my chisel to knock away the brick little by little, and I kept doing this until the pipe was able to fit in the hole nice and snug. After that, I went ahead and pre-assembled the chimney because I wanted to get a feel for how it's going to look on the smoker. And once I had everything in place, I noticed that the length of the chimney is too tall, because right now it's sitting a little bit above 4 feet. But what I'm going to do is probably cut the pipe in half, so once I'm done, it's probably going to be sitting at about 2 feet or a little bit over. And another thing that I noticed is that because of the concrete slab, the pipe is not able to sit up all the way straight. So to fix this, I'm going to make a curve in the concrete slab so that the pipe will be able to sit up straight. To make the curve for the concrete slab, I first placed the rope and lined it up with the top of my 90-degree elbow. And once I did this, I got the 90-degree elbow and lined it up with the rope, and then I placed the pipe up against the concrete slab so that I could trace out a mark for the curve. My plan to make the curve was to drill holes along the mark that I drew, and then I was going to use my hammer and chisel to break away the concrete. But while I was trying to drill the holes, the concrete slab ended up coming loose from the top of the smoker. This happened to actually ended up being a good thing, because instead of making a curve in the concrete slab, what I can do now is just push the concrete slab over enough until it's out of the way of the pipe, and then later on I can just seal it back to the smoker with mortar. Before cutting my chimney pipe down, I decided to go and do a little measuring just to make sure I cut it to the correct length, and after doing the measuring, I decided that I was going to cut it down to 2.5 feet. The chimney cap had got a little bit stuck inside the pipe from where I pre-assembled it, but to get the cap off, I used a hammer just to knock it loose a little bit until I was able to get it off. And once I did this, I went ahead and laid the pipe down and made my 2.5 foot mark, and then we used the angle grinder to cut it on down. After cutting the pipe, I soon realized that I accidentally cut the male end of the pipe off that's supposed to connect to the 90-degree elbow, and even though I made this mistake, I was still able to get the pipe connected. And to start off, I started by connecting the chimney cap to the female end of the pipe that I didn't mess with. And while I was doing this, I was having a little problem trying to get the cap on there straight, because the first time I put it on there, it was a little bit crooked. So I had to keep on putting it on and taking it off, but after messing with it for a while, I was able to get it on there straight. Before assembling the rest of the chimney, I decided that I was going to go ahead and seal the 90-degree elbow into the smoker, and I was also going to seal the old air vents that I had on the back of the food store side and on the back of the fire pit side. For the sealing, I'm going to be using gray stuff insulating foam sealing, and I decided to use this because it fills gaps up to 1 inch, and also it helps reduce draft, so that means that any smoke will be able to get through any of the gaps or cracks. And also, with using this sealant, I'm going to be using refractory cement as well, and by using this, it'll just help keep the smoke from coming out the gaps. When I went to my home improvement store, I went ahead and got the regular foam sealant, but I also got a firewood foam sealant, and I decided to use this for the smoker because it's able to withstand higher temperatures. And to use this, it comes with a little nozzle. All you do is attach it to the can, and then you just spray it and you're ready to go. But when using this, make sure you wear gloves because it's real sticky, and it also gets real hard, and you don't want to get any of that on your hands, so please wear gloves. Before using the foam insulation, I made sure that I hammered the pipe in just to make sure that it had a snug fit inside the smoker. And once I did this, I grabbed my foam insulation and I shook the can for a minute because that's what it said on the instructions. And after that, it was ready to go. So I went ahead and just started spraying it in between the gaps, going all the way around the pipe. And you want to make sure that you fill all the gaps going around. And then after I had the foam insulation in place, I went ahead and got my putty knife so I could smooth it out some. And you want to make sure that you do this early because as time goes on, the insulation going to dry, and it kind of dries kind of quick to an extent. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and spread it out how you want it to before it gets dry. I repeated this same process to seal up the old air vent holes on the back of the smoker, and I'm sealing these up because now I'm only trying to achieve a one direction way of flow. And for this to happen, the only openings that I need open are the intake vent and then the chimney opening. So I went ahead and just sealed the old air vents up with the insulation, and I also went on the inside of the smoker and sprayed some insulation as well, and I also did this around the pipe on the inside too. A little while after I put the insulation on, it had started raining outside, so I had to cover up the smoker for the day. But when I came back out the next day, I decided that I was going to put mortar on the back of those old air vents, and I was going to do refractory cement, but I didn't have any at the time, so I decided that I was just going to put mortar on the outside just to cover the holes up, and then on the inside I'm going to put the refractory cement. So I went ahead and made me a quick batch of mortar so I can go ahead and get started. And if you want to see how I make my mortar, make sure you check out part 1 of this series. Now that the mortar is done, I went ahead and got my trowel and just spread the mortar across the old air vents, and I made sure that I just covered the holes up and also the insulation all the way up just to make sure that nothing was showing. I know that earlier I said that I was just going to put refractory cement on the inside of the smoker to cover up the old air vents, but since I have so much mortar left, I decided that I'm going to double up. So for now, I'm just going to put mortar over the old holes just to cover them up, and then later on when I make my batch of refractory cement, I'm going to put a layer of that over the mortar, and this will just be an extra precaution just to make sure that no smoke comes out the holes. Somehow, some way, I still had mortar left over, so with this last little bit of mortar, I decided to go ahead and seal the concrete slab back to the top of the smoker from when I had to move it so that I can make sure that the chimney pipe was straight. Now that everything is sealed up for the most part, we went ahead and grabbed the rest of the chimney and attached it to the 90-degree elbow. And I was a little worried at first because I ended up cutting off the male end of the pipe earlier. But even though I had cut that off, it was still able to fit inside the 90-degree elbow. And one thing that we noticed, that once we had the chimney all in place, we noticed that it still had a little wiggle to it. So to fix this, I had to think of a way that I could strap down the chimney to the smoker so that the wind won't knock it over. To fix this problem, we used some metal strips that we had laying around, and for the metal strips, we first drilled 2 holes for them so that we could wrap them around the chimney, and then we bolted it together. And then for the ends of the metal strip, we drilled a hole through that, and then we used some concrete anchors so that we could drill the strip to the smoker, and this was able to help support the chimney so that it wouldn't be able to move as much. And we had a left support and a right support, and I really wasn't able to get any good footage of this, but I hope y'all get the idea. Now it's finally time to use the refractory cement, which I'm going to be using to seal up the inside and the outside of my chimney pipe, and also the old air vents where I had put the mortar. For the refractory cement, I used about half of the bucket and poured it into my, what's it called? Wheelbarrow? Wait, hold on. Oh nah, I used the whole bucket. Oh nah, never mind, I only used half a bucket. After I got done pouring the cement into the wheelbarrow and mixing it up a little bit, I went ahead and grabbed my bowl and I went ahead and poured 4 cups of cool, clean water. On the instructions, it said that you're supposed to use 1 quart of water for the whole bucket, so I went ahead and poured half the water in my bowl into the wheelbarrow and start mixing the cement up. And I went ahead and added some coloring too so that it can match the existing mortar. Once I got the cement mixed up a little bit, I noticed that it was a little watery, so I went ahead and added a little bit more cement so that I could even it on out. One thing that you could do to test to see if the cement is ready is that you could roll a little bit of the cement up into a ball in your hand, and then what you can do is toss it up in the air about a dozen times, about 1 inch up in the air. And while you're doing this, if the ball ends up breaking apart, that means it's too dry. But if it ends up like sagging through your fingers and sliding down through your fingers, that means it's too wet. But if it stays just right, that means it's ready, and then you can proceed on. When applying the refractory cement, you want to make sure that you use your hands so that you can pat it down instead of using a trowel, because in the instructions it says that if you spread the cement out to a smooth, slick finish, it's going to be hard for the water to come out of it. So make sure that you use your hands and pat it down when you're applying it. If you're wondering why the mortar is so dark, it's because I did a test run before applying the refractory cement because I wanted to see how the smoker was going to work and if it was going to work. But the test run ended up being successful, but it ended up making the mortar kind of dark, so that's why it's dark. I proceeded by placing cement on the other air vent and also where the chimney connects it. I also placed cement on the outside of the chimney pipe and made sure that I covered up all the insulation. After finishing that up, I noticed that the door to the firebox had came a little loose, so to fix this, I went ahead and grabbed some of the refractory cement that I had left and put it on the inside of the door frame, and then I had got some clamps and clamped it up against the brick just to seal it back tight. When performing the test run, the smoker ended up having really good temperatures. I think the lowest temperature it had was like 170 and the highest was like 210, and it kind of varied going up and down. But with the temperature, the smoker, it was kind of doing its own thing, and I want more control of that temperature. So in order to do this, I'm gonna add a damper to the chimney. Since I have a 6-inch chimney pipe, I had to end up getting a 6-inch damper, and I got my damper from my local home improvement store. And to install the damper, the first thing I had to do was take the top off the chimney cap, and I also had to take the protective wire that was surrounding it off too. For the damper to fit inside the chimney, I'm going to have to cut a square notch on the privacy wire so that I can be able to twist and turn the handle. Next, I went ahead and placed the damper on the chimney, and I did this so I could figure out where I'm going to drill my holes at. And once I played around with it for a little bit, I went ahead and pulled out my marker and made my marks. I used a black oxide drill bit to drill the holes through the chimney pipe, and once I did that, I went ahead and took the handle off the damper, and I just slid that through the hole, and then slid it through the damper, and then slid it through the other hole, and made sure that it was all connected together. And once I did this, I had my damper all in place. The last thing I did to complete the chimney was to put the privacy wire back on, and I made sure I lined up that square notch that I cut out. I had lined that up with the handle so I can be able to turn the handle, and then I went ahead and put the cover back on, and the chimney is now done. I had to let the refractory cement dry for a few days, but after that was done, the smoker is now complete, and it's time to do our favorite thing, which is to smoke some meat. Back when I did my first test run, I had smoked a nice brisket and it came out pretty good, but this time I'm going to be smoking some ribs. So to get the smoker ready, I went ahead and froze some firewood inside the firebox, and the first time when I did my first test run, I had to use all wood and my meat ended up being a little too smoky, so this time I'm using half wood, half charcoal, and I'm just going to add wood as I go. Next, I went ahead and pulled out my kindling, and this is going to help start the fire. And once I had put that in there with the rest of the wood, I went ahead and grabbed my lighter fluid, had sprayed some of that on the wood, grabbed my match, had lit the fire up, and now it's time to get the smoker rolling. After the smoker started getting hot, we went ahead and placed the ribs inside the smoker, and we let the ribs smoke for about 5 hours, but after that, they were juicy and tender, and once they were done, we went ahead and slapped some barbecue sauce on them things, and went ahead and got to eating, and they got my approval. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'm glad that the smoker is finally working now, and I'm glad that the chimney worked and was able to fix my temperature problem. If I had to go back and make the smoker all over again, one thing that I would really focus on is the appearance of the smoker, because I felt like I could have did a better job at this. And it was my first time laying brick, and I felt like I did a good job. But there was days where I was just laying brick and I was trying to just lay as many as I can, and I really wasn't focusing on the appearance of the smoker. So if I could go back, I'll make sure that I laid all my bricks straight and make sure that everything looked nice and neat. The second thing that I would change is the length of the convection pipe between the fire pit side and the food store side. And I will also bring this pipe up some, because right now it's laying low to the ground. And as we all know, heat rises, so if I had to rebuild it again, I would actually build the pipe up some more. I'll bring it up some more so that the airflow throughout the smoker could be better. And also I would change the length of the pipe, and I'll make the pipe longer, because right now there's a little space in between there, and if something happened to the pipe, it'll be hard to fix it. So if I had to do it again, I'll make the pipe longer and also bring it up. Make sure that you all like and comment on this video, and if you also like the content that I put out, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And for this smoker build, I really enjoyed the whole process, because this was a first good project for me to learn how to lay brick and also work on really just my masonry skills and just my problem solving skills too, because there was a lot of problems I had to solve with this smoker and a lot of thinking, but I was able to get it done at the end of the day. Again, I want to thank everybody who left advice in the comments on my past 2 videos, because without y'all, I wouldn't have been able to fix the smoker. So thank y'all. And for this smoker build, I plan on adding something else to it. I was thinking about maybe adding like a brick grill beside the smoker, and maybe even like a little table too. But let me know in the comments what y'all think I should add to this smoker build. And also let me know things that I could have improved on or did to make the smoker look better or work better. But until next time, y'all, peace, many blessings, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.